This is Just Win Bets, baby, on the Sports Bet Winning Network.
Welcome back to Just Win Bets, baby, the Sports Bet Winning Network. All right, it is time to get under the hood of the MLB season. There's nobody better to help us navigate the board than our next guest. He is the managing editor at VSiN, and he is the man who literally wrote the book on this season as the lead architect of the 2026 VSiN MLB betting guide. If there's a pitching matchup or a bullpen edge there, Shano, to be found, he's already found it. Please welcome one of the sharpest minds in the diamond, Adam Burke. Adam, how you doing, my friend?
I'm good. We're doing real good, guys. Glad to be with you here. And I got to give a shout out to Jensen Lewis as well, who's one of the co-hosts of VSiN by the Books.
Yes.
What we did with that MLB betting guide was, I'm a nerd. I did not play Major League Baseball professionally, didn't play pro ball at all. So my take is very numbers driven. And Jensen, who of course was a reliever in the major leaguers for several years, oddly enough, with my favorite team, the Cleveland Indians / Guardians, we both had our takes on each of the 30 teams. So you got a real 360-degree view of the stats-heavy, nerdy take, but also the, hey, this guy played the game take. So I think we did a really good job with that guide, and I think it's still relevant, even though we're about a week and a half into the season now.
Absolutely, absolutely. Jensen, of course, is joined with our friend Dave Ross. Shano, you've met Dave Ross by the Books, and hopefully we can get Jensen on the show as well.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And Adam, thanks for joining us. I haven't spoken yet, so thanks for joining us, man. Glad to have you. Yeah, Dave Ross, I was on his show. He's great and awesome. It'd be cool to have Jensen as well, cool too.
Yeah. So Adam, listen, you recently noted some velocity concerns for veteran starters at this stage of the season. How much do you put on a pretty much a 1 to 2 miles per hour drop in the pitcher's fastball versus it just being cold weather arm?
Yeah, I think it's really important to put that into context, right? Because if it is cold, it is tougher to get loose. It's very hard to kind of get everything going a little bit and feel like you're throwing at max velocity. But if it's not in a cold weather game, if it's not in the Midwest or the East Coast, something like that, and a guy's velo is down pitching in California or in a dome, something like that, that's definitely a much bigger concern. Now, of course, veteran starters know their bodies. They know the grind. They know how to get through 162 games. But at the same time, everybody's striving to add velo nowadays, even the older crowd, because they want to get paid with their next contracts. They want to be able to get those free agent deals if they have kind of an average or below average season and need to go somewhere else. So you definitely have to apply the right context to it, because if it is cold, yeah, velo is going to be down. But if velo is down and it's not cold, that's a much bigger red flag and something that causes me to look a little bit more. Is there a drop in his spin rate? Is there a difference in terms of maybe pitch usage? Maybe he doesn't have a feel for something or doesn't want to throw something because maybe there's a nagging injury he's trying to pitch through. There's the thing about baseball is because there's so much data out there, you can take, you can look at everything from every different angle possible. And sometimes it can be a little bit too much. Sometimes it can be paralysis by overanalysis, but in a game as nuanced, as technical, as scientific as Major League Baseball is, sometimes these things can really, create or define an edge for you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially with all the data points you have, like you said, with 162 games and teams playing 10 months out of the year, it seems like now, right? So is there any early 2026 trends that you're seeing that you don't think that the betting market has fully priced in yet? I know like a lot of things like the umpire strike zones and using like the new robotic, strike zones as well as that.
Yeah, I mean, the ABS system is really interesting, right? Because, obviously there's a lot of talk about how many calls are being overturned, how catchers have a much higher success rate of getting calls overturned than batters and pitchers do, which is, hardly surprising. It's incredible the way that those guys know the strike zone. But I think what I've found, really interesting in following a lot of games is, some teams kind of let everybody have the freedom to, challenge whatever they want. Other teams are being a lot stricter about it. Like the A's, for example, doesn't seem like they really want to let any of their batters, really challenge pitches. And it definitely hurt them in that series against Toronto, where they were on the wrong side of a lot of bad calls, or not bad calls, I guess, but questionable calls that maybe they could have challenged, but they didn't do it. Other teams, they're just kind of out there challenging everything. But there is a real strategic element to challenging where maybe a first pitch isn't where you do it, or a 1-1 pitch isn't where you do it. But there are other times where you absolutely have to do it. And so I think the strategy element of it, because you only get 2 of them, if you're wrong, that's definitely been an interesting wrinkle to the season. And, look, I think in terms of, macro trends, looking at the league as a whole, a lot of the things that, we've kind of been seeing over the last few years, very 3 true outcomes heavy, a lot of home runs, a lot of strikeouts, a lot of walks, walk rates around 10% now, heading into the second full week of the season, strikeout rates up around 24%. Both of those are higher than they would typically be in a 162 game season. So they're probably going to come down a little bit. I don't know if ABS has something to do with that, or maybe it's just the start of the season and everyone trying to get into rhythm. But that is something I've noticed here so far. We've seen a lot of strikeouts, a lot of walks, bullpens, relievers specifically have had problems with their control. So, those are things that I'm trying to factor in every single day, based on the type of pitcher that's on the mound and based on, the type of bullpen that I may or may not want to back.
Yeah. So speaking of bullpens there, when you're looking at like a favorite, let's say looking at like a minus 150 favorite or something like that, how much does a bullpen play into like bridging your fair value line, especially when that 6th to 9th inning?
Yeah, so, look, I mean, bullpens are going to be volatile night in and night out, right? Anything can happen. Any guy can have an off night. But when I'm looking specifically at a favorite or even an underdog, I want to know who's available, right? I want to know what the bullpen usage has looked like over the last few days. Have the high leverage guys pitched back-to-back days, 3 out of 4 days with, a back-to-back in there. Because this early in the season, managers do not want to burn these guys out. Obviously you want to win games. You want to win every game that you have the chance to win, but you don't want to burn these guys out either. So, if I'm looking to back a minus 150 favorite and the closer and, maybe the high leverage 8th inning right-hander, maybe the top matchup lefty, all those guys have pitched back-to-back days, I may shy away from that one, or maybe just play a first 5 run line to cut down on the VIG, something like that. But it is important to me because as you start going down the depth chart of relievers, the quality of that player definitely goes down. And also, if they're a guy not accustomed to pitching in a higher leverage situation and they get thrown into it, maybe they succeed, maybe they don't. But the position is, inherently volatile in and of itself. So now you're putting these guys in a different kind of environment that maybe they're not accustomed to. You add even more of that element into the picture. So I look a lot at bullpen usage, less so than I do look at bullpen stats or individual reliever stats, anything like that. I just want to know who's available, who I can probably rely on. And if there are guys that I can't rely on that I wish I could, then that maybe changes my, thought, my outlook on that game.
We're joined, of course, with Adam Burke, VSiN MLB analyst and contributor. You can follow him on X at Skating Tripods. Let me follow up with that, what you just mentioned. You touched a little bit on my next question here. You're known, of course, for tracking pitchers' optimization, right? Guys changing their slider usage or adding a sweeper. Who is one pitcher you've seen this month or thus far, because, of course, MLB just started, whose new pitch mix makes them an immediate must bet in their next start?
So I think one guy, and there are certain organizations, right, coming into the season that really stand out in this regard. Like Boston, for example, is a team that, they've kind of taken away the 4-seam fastball from a lot of guys, really cut down the usage of that pitch, trying to generate more swing and miss, trying to generate more weak contact. And we're seeing a guy like Ranger Suarez, kind of struggle with that a little bit. Sonny Gray, a guy with a very, very deep arsenal, he's somebody who may kind of struggle with that as well as we go forward. But one guy really, really stands out for me, and he's not on the Boston Red Sox, but he is in that division, and that's Joe Boyle of the Tampa Bay Rays. So Joe Boyle's a dude that throws extremely hard. Big guy, 6'8". The Rays have a pitching coach in Kyle Snyder who's, I think, 6'7". So they don't have a problem with acquiring really tall guys, because if there's something mechanically wrong, Snyder can help them fix it, because literally and figuratively, he can see from their perspective. So you think about how they had a big guy like Tyler Glass now, we're willing to kind of invest a lot of development into him. They're doing the same right now with Joe Boyle, who throws 97, 98. He's actually kind of had his fastball velo down a little bit this year, but a big uptick in terms of slider usage at the expense of his fastball. And even though he's a guy who can throw, kind of above the swing plane because of how tall he is and because of how hard he throws, hitters see velo at every single level of the minor leagues now. They are very accustomed to having to be ready, having to pick up on pitches a lot faster. We even see that with younger umpires as well, who have dealt with velocity all the way up through the ranks. But Boyle's a guy who's throwing the slider a lot more, and that's going to add a lot more swing and miss in his arsenal. And, so far, swing and strike percentage up to 12.8% through 2 starts. That's up from 11% last year, up from where it was with the A's. That's a guy that I start looking at, especially because he's not a household name. Nobody really knows who he is. He's thrown 127 career MLB innings. The market's going to be slow to react to a guy like that. So if I get a swing and miss lineup that maybe has problems with right-handed starters, I know Boyle's going to leverage the slider more often. I'm looking at a strikeout prop. I'm looking at an outs recorded prop. I'm looking at, obviously their money line as well, because Tampa Bay was not that highly thought of as a team coming into the season. But a guy like Joe Boyle, anytime you see a guy reduce their fastball usage and throw something with more swing and miss that induces weaker contact, that's a guy I want to play on early in the season, because I think the results will follow, and ultimately the sports books and bettors will adjust to that.
Yeah, I agree. That's great news. Tampa Bay, man, they find all these prospects everywhere, don't they?
Yeah. I don't know why anyone ever trades with Tampa Bay, because you're going to lose that trade. Like as a Guardians fan, I still have problems with them trading Junior Caminero for Tobias Myers. Yeah, well, you don't trade with the Rays because they're going to win that deal.
Right. No, they don't pay anybody, but they're great on trades, and they're great at the prospects and their scouting department. But so speaking about some of the scouting here, when you have like a mega prospect that comes up, is the public usually too high on them, or is there still value in backing the elite talent before the league adjusts?
Well, that's a really good question, because I think that's something that's kind of evolving right now, right? I mean, guys are getting to the big leagues so much faster now. You even think about a guy like Ryan Johnson, who's in the Angels rotation now. Like, he was he debuted without throwing a pitch in the minor leagues, much like Garrett Crochet did. So like, he got there real quick. Not to say that he's a great pitcher by any means or anything like that, but arms are getting there faster. Obviously, position players are getting there faster. The Jackson Chorios of the world, Connor Griffins of the world. So it's kind of tough because you don't have a large minor league sample size to, really think about with a lot of these guys. Or if you do, they pitched maybe 25 innings at this level, 30 innings at this level, 40 innings at this level, and then all of a sudden they're at the big league level, where anything can happen in one start in a small sample size and throw off the numbers and stuff like that. So you do definitely have to dig in a little bit. And it's also very important to understand the context of each one of the minor leagues. So, for example, the International League, which is one of the 2 AAA leagues, a lot of Midwest teams, Great Plains, East Coast, up in the Northeast, stuff like that. It's cold at the start of the season, right? It never really gets all that hot. But the PCL, the Pacific Coast League, where a lot of teams are out in, California, New Mexico, high elevation, Colorado, stuff like that, like the league average ERA is typically up around 5. So it's important to put that into context as well, where a guy who thrived in the PCL, now he's got to go to his big league team and play at C level. Yeah, maybe he's not going to hit as well. Or maybe a pitcher's going to go up there and have a bit more success in terms of limiting home runs, stuff like that. It's a similar thing in AA. In the Texas League, like, everybody scores 6 runs a game. That's not the same thing about the Eastern League or the other AA league that's out there. So you've got to think about that too, where pitcher numbers, especially in those small sample sizes, if you're pitching in El Paso and Albuquerque and Colorado Springs, yeah, you're probably going to have a 5 ERA. Yeah, you're probably going to give up some home runs. When you get to the big league level and you're actually pitching at C level, it's going to be a lot different. So that's something people really need to keep in mind as well, is understanding where these teams' affiliates are, which leagues they're in. And then again, I keep saying proper context, but context is everything in baseball. You got to put that into the right bucket and realize that some guys just had a much better environment to pitch or hit in than others, and that's going to dictate probably what they do getting up to the big leagues.
Yeah, totally agree. Side note, just because we're talking about the minor leagues here, minor leagues always have some great nicknames. Do you have any ones that you love? Like, which one's your favorite one?
Well, so I mean, God, there's so many. I think Trash Pandas is incredible. I'm going to go, just because it's near and dear to my heart, because I went to the University of Akron, and they were the Arrows when I was there. But they're the Rubber Ducks now, which Akron's the Rubber City. Goodyear, Firestone, all of that. Goodyear Blimp is based out of Akron. So I think Rubber Ducks is a pretty cool name for a baseball team.
That's pretty good.
We live in Virginia, and we have the Peanuts, which is, I believe, a single A.
They're single A.
Yeah, it's single A.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the closest one to us. But yeah, there's the 9 league system always has like some funny names. So I'm like, it'll always have some good ones. All right, awesome. So one thing that a lot of people struggle with, and they want to avoid bullpen chaos, kind of like we talked about earlier, is, and I do this a lot when I bet baseball, is just bet the first 5 innings. Are there certain teams or divisions where you strictly are a first 5 better, or do you kind of look at the whole picture there?
Yeah, it definitely goes on a case-by-case basis as the season goes along, right? Because, again, I talk about bullpen usage. Well, that includes injuries. If there's a average bullpen that all of a sudden loses kind of their fireman, their high-leverage right-handed setup guy, that's a bullpen I'm going to downgrade probably pretty significantly. But you also have to take into account that, when you play first 5s, right, the juice is different on a first 5 money line that's going to be on a full game, where you may wind up paying a little bit more of a price, or, the team that's favored for the game might not be favored for the first 5 based on the starting pitching matchup, or, there's a big line movement where, the full game kind of shifts, but maybe the first 5 doesn't. So you kind of got to weigh that risk reward as well, where when you think about it, teams that have a lead after 5 innings on average typically win about 80% of their games. So you got to factor that into the equation, right? Do I expect this team to be leading after 5? If I do I want to just go ahead and play the full game and maybe take a little bit better of a price? Also, maybe the bullpen that they're playing against has had a lot of high usage or has struggled here of late, something like that. Maybe they, have a state of flux with the closer, maybe getting bumped from that role. You think about the Houston Astros right now with Brian Abreu, for example. Like, I'd probably be more inclined to take the full game against Houston than I would be the first 5, because A, I'm probably going to get a better price, and B, I do have the chance that their bullpen screws up, and it's definitely beneficial for my team's position. The one thing I will say about first 5s, though, is that as opposed to a full game, and of course this is true, especially if you're betting run lines for full games, for a first 5, both of those teams are batting 5 times. That's not the case in terms of a full game, where the home team, if they have a lead after 8.5 innings, they don't bat in the 9th inning. So, in terms of thinking about run line betting, for example, where it's minus half a run for the first 5, minus 1.5 for the full game, I don't play home team run lines very often because they're probably only going to hit 8 times. They're going to have one fewer opportunity to score runs for me, whereas I'll probably be more inclined to play, a first 5 run line minus half a run, which I did, here today on Monday with a game that starts early at 4:00 with the Rays and the Cubs, where, I just, it's one of those things where, hey, if they're up 3-2, then they win the game in the top of the 9th. Like, that's not good for me because they didn't have a chance to score an extra run. But for a first 5, they're going to bat 5 times. And I know that. Yeah. So, that's definitely something to keep in mind too when you're talking about first 5 versus full game.
We're here with our friend Adam Burke from VSiN. He is the MLB analyst, and you can follow him on X at Skating Tripods. But Shayna, also, if you're a VSiN Pro subscriber, I personally recommend it. He wrote this with our good friend Jensen Lewis of Buy the Book, and you can go to vsin.com/MLB-guide. It's an amazing 2026 MLB betting guys, bettors. You need to have the right tools in order to bet this some people would say complex sport, but the betting guide is definitely worth it. So Adam, let me ask you this question here. In MLB, sharp money often goes against the grain. What's a specific ugly underdog you're looking to back this week as occasional fan would be terrified to even touch?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, right? Because, there are a lot of sports where, the sharp money means a lot, right? You talk about the NFL, market that just has so much handle, so much volume to it that when you see a move, it's pretty significant. Major League Baseball is a little bit different because you get the overnight moves, right? You get when the line is first posted, you get the overnight moves kind of based on what the modeling crowd projects based on the starting pitchers. Then in the morning, everyone updates their models from the night before, looks at who's available, who's not, what happened in the game prior to maybe a hitter who was slumping, hit a couple home runs, something like that. And all of a sudden the modeling crowd will take another swing in the morning. And then when lineups come out, obviously one player missing could move a line 8, 10, 12 cents, 15 cents if it's a superstar, maybe even 20, something like that. So there's a lot of different little time windows of when the sharper money does tend to come in on these games. So for me, it's a little bit different because I am a handicapper and a bettor, but I'm also a content creator. And I also have to have my article out in time for people to be able to see it, be able to read it, be able to, understand and kind of, take in the information that's in it. So, I write that in the morning where maybe the line's not going to be as optimal because some of the value has been extracted from it, stuff like that. So that's a little bit of a difficult thing when you talk about being a content creator in this space. But in terms of underdogs, look, people love to overreact, right? We're 9-10 games into the season. Some teams that were supposed to be good are not playing particularly well. Some teams that were supposed to be bad are maybe kind of overperforming a little bit at this point in time. So it's all about looking at the schedule. It's all about kind of looking at the matchups, maybe seeing if a team can kind of sneak up on another team. This used to be a really good angle in Oakland. Now, obviously, they're playing in Sacramento, but a team would be playing in, let's say, San Diego or San Francisco, and then have to go to Oakland. And nothing against Oakland, but you're in this great city, this great tourist destination. There's good places to go out after the game. You're playing in this beautiful ballpark. And then you go play in a place where the sewage backs up in the clubhouse, So teams would go out to Oakland and they would regularly lose series, especially East Coast teams, even when the A's weren't particularly good. So those are definitely things to kind of keep in mind here a little bit. They are favored on Monday, but I think a team like the Rays where the Cubs had to play a doubleheader on Sunday in miserable conditions. They've already lost 2 starters now. Cade Horton first. Matthew Boyd just went on the IL here on Monday morning. It's kind of tough to keep having these little hits and then you're having to play these doubleheaders that are just very long days at the yard, stuff like that. And again, an offense that looks good but isn't really in full swing yet. Those are the ones I'm kind of looking to pick on right now because April's typically the best month for betting on underdogs because everyone's kind of trying to get into the flow of the season. The gaps between teams very much show up over 162 games. But right now, the gaps between teams probably aren't as big. So, kind of looking to bet on teams like Tampa Bay. Miami this week is a team that I like as well against the Reds who still absolutely cannot hit. And also maybe the Nationals because the Cardinals offense is kind of what we all thought it would be. And they're not playing very well right now, and a very pitch to contact pitching staff that I don't like. The Nationals are a team I may be on, here a couple of times this week as well.
Yeah, and speaking of underdogs, we had one yesterday, my friend. We had, of course, the Padres who traveled to Boston yesterday, and they won 8-6. So we had that at plus money, was at plus 130. So that was a really good one for us. But the Yankees have been doing well as well if you've been doing the run line. But I think you're absolutely hit the nail on the head when it comes to it's early, it's April, may want to take a chance on some of these underdogs.
Yeah, and I think something too, I think another thing that maybe you can't really quantify it, and maybe it's something if you guys do get Jensen on the program, I think it'd be something really good to ask him about, would be, I think one of the reasons why underdogs, do better in the month of April is because, a lot of times those are going to be road teams, right? And if you're the home team here, you're still trying to get everything set up, and whether it's your rental house or your apartment, your family's not with you, or maybe you're trying to move your family, from wherever you lived in the off season, stuff like that. There's a lot going on. When you're on the road, you're just out there with the boys. You're going to a steakhouse after the game, or taking that pregame nap, or you're in your routine. But when you're at home trying to get everything set up for the next 6 months, you're out of your routine, right? You got a lot of other stuff going on that kind of, distracts from baseball. And it's a game where, as we all know, you've got to be very focused given that, if you failed 70% of the time, you're actually still a really good hitter. Yeah. So, it's definitely something I think early on in the season. Again, it's not quantifiable by any means, but you come back from a long road trip and all of a sudden, you got to unpack moving boxes, or, you got to make sure that you've got, your parking spot in order at the apartment complex, or, whatever, like all these things that we just kind of do on a daily basis that we think athletes have people to do for them. It's not really the case. So, you got a lot of other stuff going on when you're at home to where kind of hard to settle in a little bit. And so again, not really quantifiable, but something that I kind of factor into the equation here early in the season, especially for teams coming off of, maybe 6-day, 9-day road trips, something like that.
Yeah, it's very true. Something I never thought about either. So, and it's kind of like what Yogi Berra said, baseball's 90% mental and the other half is physical. Right. So you got all that stuff focused on everything else and it kind of takes you out of the game. And I totally agree with that. if you had to put a buy low ticket in your pocket right now on a team you think can win the pennant, who has the best price to talent ratio, do you think?
Let's see. I mean, Boston's a team that I played for the World Series coming into the season at 15-1. Oof. They're a much better team than they've played here so far. Obviously, I got a really horrible number on that at this point in time.
Right.
But Boston is a team. I mean, offensively, they're going to get better. They're still a very young team too. They have reinforcements from down below. They probably have two better pitchers down in the minor leagues than what they currently have in the rotation, based on how some guys are performing. Ranger Suarez specifically. But they're a team, I think they just have way too much talent to continue to be playing this poorly. They're a team that, the announcers will talk about this all the time, right? It's a good time to catch a team. It's a good time to catch Boston right now, but they're going to get this thing figured out, I think. There's just way too much talent on that roster for them not to be able to do it. In terms of other ones, I mean, I look at the AL West. Seattle is still the team to beat out there, even though they're, off to a little bit of a slow start, had a little bit of a tough schedule to open things up. Houston, they're getting more offense than I thought they would early on in the year, but now you get Hunter Brown going to the IL, Josh Hader, who knows when he'll be back. They're a team that doesn't have a lot of margin for error like they used to. And Yordan Alvarez is carrying the offense, and he'll probably get hurt again at some point. So I think Seattle is a team that you can kind of look to buy in on right now, where nobody in the AL West has really separated themselves, but they have the best chance of doing it. I like Texas a lot too, but Seattle's a team, I think their ceiling is pretty clearly the highest in the AL West, even though they're nowhere close to playing up to it right now.
Before we let you go, my friend, I got to ask you this question. It's a two-part question. One is, do you feel that since we're close to the Washington Nationals and we support our local team here, do you feel that they may make a wild card presence this year? And in addition, could you give us one or two games on tomorrow's slate where your model shows a massive edge over the current line? We did play the Miami Marlins as they host the Cincinnati Reds. We took them on money line at -125. So you have to pay a little bit of the juice there. But any outcome that you see for tomorrow's game, and let alone our Washington Nationals?
Well, I'll start with the Nationals. I feel bad, but the reason I'm going to start with the Nationals is because then I can finish with the glass half full a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we'll call it a transitional year to say the least, right? I mean, they have a manager in Drew Butera who's younger than, a lot of players around the league. So, it's definitely a transitional year. Everyone's kind of learning together with that team. I think kind of the big question will be, do they hold on to CJ Abrams as the season goes along, where they can get a massive haul for him, a really, really big return, plays a premier position, can steal some bags, has power, a lot of tools with that kid. Like, do they hold on to him? There's some relievers that maybe they'll try to move, guys that they just picked up on basically 1-year deals off the scrap heap, hoping they stay healthy and perform well. It's going to be a long year for the Nationals. I'm sorry to say. But, again, I mean, on a game-by-game basis, everybody can possibly have a little bit of value. We'll see. Like I said, I mean, Cade Cavalli going on Tuesday, that's one that I may play. I mean, I like Matthew Liberatore for the Cardinals, but the Cardinals aren't hitting right now. And so, you go out on the road, park that you're not super familiar with, don't go to all the time. Just a team that typically plays a lot better at home. They're very much built for their home ballpark, which is a good pitcher's park. Nationals Park is not a good pitcher's park. So that's one I kind of like here for Tuesday, taking a look at, maybe Washington in that dog roll there against St. Louis. Another one I would look at here for Tuesday is actually Texas with Nate Eovaldi against George Kirby. So again, I do really like Seattle long term, but Kirby's a guy right now. When you're a predominantly fastball pitcher, and when you're a guy like Kirby, where it's really about command for you, doesn't walk anybody, doesn't really give up a ton of home runs, throws a lot of strikes. But early on in the season, if you don't have that fastball putting it exactly where you want to, you create a lot of opportunity for the other offense to make a lot of hard contact. And I think that's something that Texas can do here against Kirby. So I really like Nate Eovaldi. Obviously, Texas is a pretty good pitcher's park as well. But I think that's a game where I will be on the Rangers there in that one, where I think Kirby, it's going to take him a little bit of time to kind of get settled in, struggled a bit in his last start against New York. I could see a continuation of that here against Texas.
Yeah, what you said about the Nationals coach there, by the way, their GM is only 31 years old. So that whole front office is super young. Super young.
It's one of those things. So I used to, when I was living in Cleveland, I've been in Vegas for the last 5 years, but I realized how old I was when I was going to the minor league hockey games there in Cleveland. And I'm like, I'm older than every single one of these guys on this roster. I can't imagine being a Nationals fan right now and looking at a 31-year-old GM. Like I'd just be going, what have I done with my life?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
I'm like
No, I just thought I'd shoot high.
All
Yeah.
right.
I'm the same age as like Sean McVay, and then like I see him like being the head coach of a professional NFL team, and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm doing something wrong. But especially when he got hired like 30. Like he was like young 30s when he got hired. Same thing. It's crazy.
Well, Adam, we know you're a busy man, but thank you for joining us. Of course, you can follow our friend Adam Burke at Skating Tripod on X. Don't forget to log on to VSiN.com/MLB-guide. Check out this betting guide for Major League Baseball. We'll be right back with the wise man about his Masters picks right after this. Come on back.